Creativity is a gift from Allah, but if it's not used for good, it can destroy lives. So what happens to that next generation that they have the power, they have the potential to invent and to be entrepreneurial and to start new things? They have no reason to do it. There's no push. There's no drive. Because you have the comfort of the government will come and support me anyway. They'll just help me out anyway. So I don't have to do anything. So what happens in that society? The young generation is always going to be creatives. Allah put that in there. But if they're not using that creativity for business and for engineering and for design and for invention and for good things, if they're not using it for that, then they're going to use it for drugs. Then they're going to use it for, different kinds of crazy creative activities in the wrong direction. Creativity will go somewhere. If you don't put it in the right direction, it's going to go in the wrong direction. So we find ourselves in a strange situation. We find ourselves on the one hand caught in the trap of capitalism, which is like a cancer. And on the other hand, we're caught in something like a socialism, which in the end is against human nature. Human beings can't function that way. Overall, it will increase things like depression and anxiety and unhealthy habits, etc. What does the Quran have to say about all of this? What does Islam have to say about all of this? I told you one of the first concerns the Quran has is economics. One of the first things Allah points out is corruption and economics. So what is the Quran solution and what is Islam's solution to this problem that the entire world is facing? First and foremost, Allah had created a system in which you cannot just make money however you want. There are some things that are haram, which means you cannot involve in them to make money. So you cannot use gambling to make money. You cannot use alcohol and drugs to make money. You cannot use riba to make money. These things that destroy society and corrupt society, you cannot use them to make money. You can't sell, you like prostitution and things. You cannot do those things to make your money. So that's one block that's been placed. The second block that's been placed is you can't just sell your customer whatever you want. You can't be, I read that in the beginning when Allah says the worst part of hell is for people who give their customers a little bit less than they deserve, who cheat their customers in a smart way. I'm giving you an easy translation of if you know how to cheat your customer without your customer realizing it. So you gave them milk, but this 20% water you added, they didn't notice. They didn't know that or a cell phone company says, oh, your bill is 29 or your bill is 100. And then they add a little fine print there and becomes 125. And it's actually nothing. It's just print on, has no meaning. It's actually no service at all. And they increase the bill right. These are the Allah says He puts a stock to the soul. If a Muslim is running a business he cannot be because he doesn't want to end up in hell. Then on top of that, when wealth increases, Allah put in a system of zakat. Allah put in a system at the time of someone's death that they have to distribute their wealth and inheritance. So what happens when somebody dies? Their daughter gets a little bit, their son gets a little bit, their wife gets a little bit, their father, their mother, their sisters, their brother, everybody gets a piece. Even if they had $1 billion, nobody in the next generation, nobody's a billionaire. Now they became maybe millionaires, but they're not billionaires. And those millionaires, when they die, they distribute it again and then they distribute it again. So the wealth, instead of staying up in one place, it keeps breaking and breaking and breaking and breaking. What happens over generations? Otherwise, you get 1 or 2 or 3 families, like even in Europe, the United States, Australia, Canada, these Western nations that talk about democracy and the free market and all of these things. And they sell this as, oh, the Muslims are backwards and these third world countries need to learn from us, etc., etc. In all of those countries, there's maybe 100 families that control most of the wealth. It's the same thing as before. It's not any different because they don't like to let the wealth flow. They like to keep the wealth within a certain group of people. And this is actually something Allah talked about in the Quran when He said, And Allah even specifically spelled out Allah is putting certain policies in place so that wealth doesn't go in circles only among rich people. So the billionaire is going to marry his son to the billionaire's daughter over there, and they're going to have a billionaire party, and all the money that was spent between them. It never made its way anywhere down to anybody else. This is actually what the Quran came to fix. But the purpose of Mai was something more. In these last few minutes, I want to share with you something that is normally not highlighted. Allah says in is about the of Allah, especially the highest form of Allah, which is at the end of Allah says that of used to pray more than half the night, more than half the night, but he was not alone. There was a group with the Prophet ﷺ, not all some of them they used to pray that much also. Okay, in the next ayah, Allah says, and Allah knows for the rest of the Muslims in Medina that include thee and the rest of you cannot do this. You're not all capable of this. Some of you do this but the majority of you cannot do this. So Allah accepted your read whatever you can from the Quran. Read whatever you can from the Quran. Okay. Now that's Allah made it a little bit easier. So you cannot pray half the night in the only prayer of it's okay. 5-10 minutes, it's okay. At least you did something in the Quran. Recite whatever is easy for you from the Quran. Then he says, but there are others who are traveling all over the world to pursue Allah's, which means business. Why did people travel back in the day? They would put their items on the camel and they would travel to another tribe and sell their items and then buy some items and come back and buying and selling import-export business. This is what they did. And business were one thing. This is it's an expression for business. So Allah is basically saying, and there are some of you that are business people. They're business people. So you have to travel and you have to worry about security of your camel and you have to go to a new place and you have to earn a living and it's harder for you. You can't do that because you're too busy. And then he says, and there are others who are fighting in the path of Allah in the middle of a war. You can't just stop and pray till you can't do that. So Allah says there are other exceptions, but which exception did he mention first? Who mentions about this? He says when death comes, because death will come to all of us. He says, when death comes, I only want one of two kinds of death. One of them I die as a shahid in the path of Allah. Everybody's heard about that one. The second one, he says, I have a donkey and I have my items on the donkey and I'm traveling to a new place to do business and I die on the way because Allah gave it to you about capitalism and socialism today. Why am I talking about this ayah? Because Allah has highlighted the importance and the value of good business. There is enough examples of corrupt business in the world. Corrupt pharmaceutical industries, corrupt weapons manufacturers, corrupt social media companies, corrupt technology companies, corrupt AI engines. Now there's corruption in almost every industry. The solution is not the destruction of these industries. The solution is the correction of these industries. Until you have the good pharmaceutical industry, the righteous pharmaceutical industry, you cannot replace the corrupt pharmaceutical industry. Until you have the righteous technology companies, the good technology companies, you cannot replace the evil and the corrupt technology companies. Who do you think is going to do that? Those who are actually going to engage in business. We can sit there and complain about these billion-dollar organizations and companies and whatever. You will complain about them for the next 100 years or 200 years. That's not going to change anything. You know what will change something? When we become competitors in the marketplace with our principles, we're not the ones increasing. We're going to run a different kind of business. Which is why the next generation of Muslims needs to understand the power of business. They need to understand the power of building wealth, that may Allah make us leaders of honesty in a world full of corruption.